Hello, friends, and welcome back to Ghoul's Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster.
And on a recent episode, we mentioned Victorian mourning, which is, of course, a topic of extreme interest to me. Because the Victorians had very elaborate and extensive mourning practices, I thought today we would talk about just one specific and pretty infamous part of their traditions, which is making art out of human hair.
Yay. I've literally been waiting for you to do this episode. Also, I just had a skit that's sketch and skit combined. A
Put
sket
together, yep.
popped into my head of I need someone to make a TikTok, and by someone I mean us. That's like my morning routine, but it's morning like
Morning.
MOUR. And it's
I
like a
like it.
Victorian being like, first I get up and I make a wreath out of my sister's hair. Then I put on all black.
Put on all black. I go and get red roses because they
Then I wail for 2 hours.
I love it. That is very good. We should definitely
New
make that
TikTok
TikTok.
dropping on the Ghouls Night In pod page
Yes.
after this episode. Anyway,
All
enough of my
right.
bullshit. Continue.
Yes. Well, no, this is good. We got to make the notes. Got to let the people know. So the practice of using human hair for art or jewelry is called hairwork. And the practice of like gifting or keeping a lock of hair from a loved one obviously goes back very deep into history. Hair has had a lot of importance over time. It's kind of like it's a piece of your body that you can leave with someone. So, like, there's a lot of mythology about hair and things like that. I saw a lot of varying reports about how far back hair art goes. Like, some places were just vaguely like the Middle Ages, and some people were like 14th century, 12th century. But really, pretty much every single article you can read about hair art starts with some version of like, the Victorians didn't invent it, but they sure did make it a thing.
But they sure did go for it.
They perfected it. So,
Those crazy
those
Victorians.
crazy Victorians. See, now that's a shirt that we need.
We do. Yeah, that's
We
true.
need that. So, hair work is most often associated with mourning today, but it actually wasn't just related to death, which did surprise me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, making jewelry and decor out of hair was considered just like a standard Victorian lady crafting option, like doing your needlework.
Like you're mending, yeah.
Yep. So
Wow.
like ladies' journals of the time would include instructions about how you can make cords and beads out of hair, like special ways and like a pattern, like how you would get, a needlepoint pattern. They would be like, "Hey, I got a great new hair pattern for you."
But are they still sourcing the hair from the deceased?
Not always.
Okay.
Um, so I also found out that you could use like a man's hat as the base for your hair art. So like you would use like the flat top part of the hat as like a base for, like laying everything out. But if you were really dedicated, to this crafting, you could get a braiding table, which
Ooh.
was like a nice little tea table that had a hole in the middle for hair and
Tell me
bobbins
why
and things.
tell me why I thought when you said a man's hat, I was picturing them like weaving a toupee inside that.
That would also be very good.
I was
Like
like,
like those
wow.
like those visors you can buy that have like the spiky hair coming out of it.
That's literally
The
what I was
Victorians were just
picturing.
like, "Here, baby, let me just make you a little weave."
Little death hawk. Oh my god.
Oh
Whew,
my
okay, so
goodness.
anyway,
So
a braiding
anyway,
table.
yes, so I do have some directions for preparing the hair from Godey's Lady's book, from the 1850s.
Okay.
So here are your instructions. Sort the tress, which is about to be used, into lengths. Tie the ends firmly and quite straight with pack thread. Put the hair into a small saucepan with about a pint and a half of water and a piece of soda the size of a nut, and boil it for about a quarter of an hour or 20 minutes. Take it out, shake off the superfluous moisture, and hang it up to dry, but not near a fire. When
Sure.
it has become perfectly dry, Divide into strands containing from 20 to 30 hairs each, according to the fineness of the hair or the directions given for the pattern about to be worked. It must be observed that every hair in the strand should be of the same length and the strands should all be of equal length. And then it tells you about how you can knot the end and put like weights on it and lay them on the table and just get on into it.
Man, that's like wig making, like so tedious, strand
Yeah,
by
it's very
strand.
intense. Yes. And okay, so I had put this in as just like a floating fact in here, but I don't know if you remember this or if any of our listeners will, but Madeline, the little
Mhm.
redheaded orphan girl,
Mhm.
there was
Annie? No.
there was a movie where like of the animated version, there was
Okay.
a movie where she was kidnapped by a mean lady who was kidnapping little girls and making them use their hair to make lace,
Yes, I
and they
do
wanted
remember that.
Madeline's fancy red hair, and they were all, like, going blind, and, I mean, I don't think that, like, the kidnapping was necessarily true, but, like, it was true that people made lace out of human hair, and that was considered, like, especially delicate and especially fancy.
Yeah. Oh, I was such a Madeline girly. I had like a Madeline doll. I do remember that.
Yes.
Well, isn't that kind of, well, maybe it's not lace. Isn't that kind of the thing in Sweeney Todd? I don't know why I said it like that. Sweeney Todd?
Sweeney Todd.
But they're like taking the hair from the women in the asylum.
Oh, yeah,
I don't remember why, but I'm assuming it's something to that
for
nature.
hair-related nonsense.
Not hair related nonsense. Hair related tomfoolery.
Hair-related tomfoolery and shenanigans. So as we were saying, you might make hair jewelry as a gift for a dear friend to affirm your friendship. There is
Sure,
also,
nothing weird
yeah,
about that.
it was apparently common for little girls to make each other rings out of their hair as like friendship tokens. So that
That's the
is,
most sapphic thing I can imagine.
I know, right?
Like, history will say they were best friends. They made each other rings of their hair.
Out of my own hair. There were also examples of like people would make like art that was like a family tree. And so
Oh,
you
that's
would
cool.
take hair from each family member, sometimes before they were dead, sometimes after, and like make like a new flower for your hair tree. So according to one of the articles I read, the curious Victorian tradition of making art out of human hair, the majority of hair art was for like just kind of domestic purposes.
Mhm.
But of course, it is not incorrect to think of hair jewelry as a mourning tradition because it became hugely popular for this during the Victorian era and was definitely like majorly entrenched into like the elaborate death culture in the Victorian era. A 1856 Home Journal article called Hairwork, a dearly cherished memento linking us fondly with those from whom we are separated by distance or death. So it was really seen as something that was very intimate, especially in the case of jewelry. You know, it's something that you'd be wearing on your person, or it was something that was decoration in kind of like the private parts of your home. It was very rarely like on public display.
Which is interesting because, like, other Victorian mourning practices, like, sure, we'll display the body in the living room, but that hair
Right.
art, we gotta keep in private rooms of the home.
Keep it private. I will say so like some of these hair jewelry pieces are like pretty subtle and some are just like wow that is some hair.
That is
So
some hair.
that is some hair. As I kind of mentioned before, it seemed like from what I could tell like looking at kind of the extant examples, making a chain out of hair seemed pretty common. So like people would have like a watch fob where the chain was hair or like your bracelet would be hair. You also see like kind of like lockets or like a see-through setting that has like actual curls of hair, like kind of decoratively arranged in it. And that's
Mhm.
very obviously like, wow, that's some hair in there.
Yeah.
Um,
I've seen
there,
those where it's more
yeah,
just like a shadow box.
yes. Yes. There was also apparently a fashion for pulverizing hair into paint, and then you would paint like a little miniature scene on like the back of a brooch, and then maybe the front of the brooch had like a curl of hair in it.
Oh my goodness. Pulver
So,
like
yes.
like how? Oh, what
Um,
does that process look like? Hair doesn't, like, smash. I guess anything does if you smash it hard enough.
yeah, like, I would assume that you treat it somehow to, like, make it especially brittle, and then you'd be
Huh.
there were not a lot of details about this hair paint
Yeah,
procedure,
that's fascinating.
unfortunately,
Huh.
but it is very interesting, and I think then, of course, one of the things that we really think of when we think about Victorian hair art are these really elaborate, like wreaths and decorative pieces of hair.
Yes.
I will put some of those up on our Instagram, but they're very impressive and definitely the ones that I think invoke the most, like, oh my God, it's hair reaction from people. Like, I know I'm going to be interested what kind of the reaction to this episode is because I know a lot of people are like deeply grossed out by this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like,
Hmm,
I feel like anytime you, like, show, like, hair things, people are just like, "Oh my god, barf," where I find hair, like, pretty inoffensive, like,
same, yeah.
as when it
There
comes
are
to
a lot
pieces.
worse things you could
I was
keep
gonna say
from
when
from
it comes to
people's
pieces of
bodies.
someone's body, like, hair, I'm kinda like, "Whatever," but I will say,
I
I
mean, I
mean, you
honestly
and
I find that less disturbing than, like, ashes.
right?
Like, and not to say that those are bad, but, like, to
No, yeah,
me,
but
that's
if you were weighing, like, which one is
right, to me,
weirder.
I'm like, yeah, I would rather have, like, a beautiful framed piece of hair than your body in a jar. Like, that's to me, just a personal preference.
I mean, I don't know if you and I are also somewhat desensitized to this
Sure.
because I believe that as a fellow vintage lady, you have probably also saved your hair for hair
Oh,
related purposes.
yeah, the comments I got on one of my hairstyling videos because I was talking about, like, making a rat,
Yeah.
and people were like, "You did
See,
what?"
I see people are really grossed out by hair that is not attached to your head, and I'm like, what? It's my hair. It's here, and like it's
Yeah,
one of the cleanest parts that would be detached from my body. I don't really see the
right.
issue with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but that's interesting. If you have an issue with hair, tell us about it.
Yeah,
What grosses you out about detached hair specifically? I'm curious.
beware of our Instagram because I am gonna post pictures of hair art.
There
Um,
will be hair.
Yes. So these kind of, if anyone's not familiar with them, this generally hair that's twisted into like flowers, shapes, pinned into place in kind of a big shadow box. Sometimes there'd be like beads or like little seed pearls as decoration. And apparently you would generally would keep that open at the top so you could just continue to add more hair to it, like as people passed or anything else. You could just keep on building those, so they do get, like, incredibly elaborate over time.
Yeah. I
And although ooh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I this is possibly slightly off topic, but there is a gal that I met through a person here in my area that does the most incredible hair art you've ever seen
Mm.
currently, and we will have to show her art because it's the most elaborate. She made like chicken talons
Oh,
out of
wow.
hair. Her name's Anne Grim Parsons on Instagram if you want to see some really freaking incredible hair art. But anyway, continue.
Okay, so this is just a sidetrack because you mentioned it. Did you ever go to Layla's Hair Museum?
No, where's that?
So it's sadly, it's closed now, but it was in Independence, Missouri.
Really?
And so when I looked at it, because I remember that was, like, my first introduction to hair art is it was like a Travel Channel special of, like, bizarre whatever, and it was, like, the o according it was, proclaimed to be, like, the only museum of hair art and hair work, and it
That's
appears to be
crazy.
closed now, but I when I looked it up to talk about in this episode, I was like, "Oh, this is right by Midge."
That's literally yeah, 15 minutes from me.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was, she was a I think she's alive, but I mean, she is a was formerly a cosmetologist who was just, like, very into hair art and had, like, this incredible collection of
I
hair
love
pieces.
that. I
Yeah.
I have become very interested in the idea of having a very specific museum.
Yes.
And I love like, I just went to the Ouija museum in Salem, and, like, that person that runs that, John, has found his calling. Like, that is such a specific interest. I want to have a weird, niche, spooky
Right.
museum.
Yes. That'd be very
Layla,
cool.
bring back the hair
Bring
museum.
back the hair museum.
Please, I wanna go.
Ah. All right. So although this was primarily a women's handicraft, it was popular enough that were shops and professionals that you could also buy hair jewelry from. My favorite, one of the sources showed an 1854 mourning bracelet from Tiffany and
Oh,
Co. That had a gold and diamond face, and then like the chain was hair.
what? That's cool.
So pretty cool. So, like a lot of things from this period, hair work really fell out of fashion with World War One. It was, such a major cultural reset. Everything just kind of changed at that point. Queen Victoria herself died in 1901. So that kind of coming out of that
Ended the era a little
the
bit.
end of the era, and end of the, like 50-year long mourning. Um, and as history went on, obviously today we can have photographs and other pieces to remember our loved ones. So the need to like keep a physical part of their body has become somewhat less. And hair jewelry has kind of started to be seen as just like bizarre and a relic of the past. But I will say that despite this, when our first family dog died, I asked my mom for a tuft of his fur to keep in a locket.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did, and
You've always
she
been a weird little kid. I love
I
that.
have. I can't say that I ever made anyone a ring of my own hair from, when I was on the playground, but honestly, if the idea had been floated to me, I probably would have.
Well, that would be a great opportunity for us to bond as show hosts together, as we can just send
Ooh.
each other some, rings of our own hair.
I mean, honestly, I was looking at this article in Victoriana magazine that was, like, showing, like, the braiding tables, and they, like, published some of the, like, descriptions, and I was looking at it being like, "I could make art out of
I
hair.
could do
I
that.
bet I could do that." So, I don't know, stay tuned, friends. You might see some hair work coming from Snark Industries in the
Snark
future.
industry. Well, I mean, do you have your rats and thing from when you had green hair just going to waste now? You can use some of that.
Right. I'll just have to, get my piece of soda the size of a nut and boil all that hair
That made me
on my
laugh. I was like, "Which
stove.
nut?" That could really,
Right. I
really,
know.
really change depending on
Ugh,
if it's like a peanut or like a cashew.
that is so the way of like all these like Victorian recipes. They're just like a dab the size of a nut, and you're like, what does that
Well,
mean? That means nothing.
I
Oh my goodness.
I'm very like fascinated because I've only ever I guess I it makes perfect sense now thinking about it, but like I never uh thought about the fact that like people were wearing
Yeah.
the jewelry. Like I mean, lockets with hair in them and things like that, yes. But like when you're talking about the Tiffany bracelet where the chain is made of hair, I could never be trusted to wear that. Like, that has to be so extremely delicate, and then I'm assuming, like, it cannot get wet. It cannot, like,
Yeah, I would
how
assume not, although, like, looking at them, they do look, like, fairly brittle, so, like, I'm not sure if there's, like, some kind of, like, treatment that you put them through the hair through, a apart from, like, the soda ash, like, after you've, like, already braided it to, like, kinda, like, I don't know if you seal it somehow, because the
dip it in
fact that it
arsenic and
yeah, the fact that it's still all these things, like, still exist today, do show that, like, it's fairly long lasting, and that's one of the reasons that, people picked hair in the first place as a
Sure.
memento, like, it will last a
It
long
does be
time, but yeah,
lasting.
it does, you got that hair. You see all those mummies that still have hair, so
Oh, yeah, that's wild. Man.
but yes, that is my exploration into the world of hair work. Just dipping our toes into that Victorian morning ocean that we
Dip
will
those toes.
continue to dive into as we go on. But I hope you enjoyed this little sample.
I'm going to shamelessly plug once more. Anne is doing. So I just found out about this. It's amazing once you like start like how other spooky people just start coming out of the woodwork, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm finding out about all these events in Kansas City that I never knew existed. So if you're from Kansas City, apparently there is a like craft bazaar that happens in the Union Cemetery, that historic cemetery in downtown Kansas City. And it's happening, I think, on May 13th, the evening of, and that Anne that does the hair art is going to be vending there. So if you're
Ooh.
in the market for some fancy hair art in Kansas City and you can't go to the museum anymore, apparently, uh, check that out because I'm
Check it
I'm
out.
excited to see some of her work in person. It's really like the most crazy intricate thing I've ever seen.
Oh, that sounds delightful.
Maybe she can teach us so we can make each other rings.
Yes. We need to exchange hair rings of podcast devotion.
Yeah, that's how you know it's real.
Yep. All right, my friends. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did have a fun time hanging out with us, we would love if you would give us a rating or a review on your podcast app of choice. Spotify actually has a new thing now where you can tell us how you liked an episode. It gives
Oh,
a little
nice.
question, and we can post those if we want to. So feel free to leave your comments there. I've also been occasionally putting up a sassy little poll on the Spotify episode. So you could vote on, for example, last time we voted on what color of funeral flowers you would like to have. So we'll see what we put up for this one. And I do believe we have a review that we can read today.
We do. This is a 5-star review from Gano Girl titled Fun, Even for Fraidy Cats. While I don't consider myself a fan of all things spooky, these ladies make me a believer. Love listening to them chat while I go about my day and often find myself laughing out loud alongside them. My favorite episode has to be the spiders one. Yes. As I find myself rattling off some of the fun facts about I found fun facts found there on the regular. So glad I could bring you some spider facts. That makes me so pleased.
You gotta
Uh,
have some spider facts
spider
in your
facts.
back pocket.
Thanks for letting me in on your fun and keep up the great work, ghouls. Yay! Thank
Yay,
you.
thank you.
Glad we could glad we could provide. I've had a lot of people message us, me or the pod, saying that they've been able to like whip out spooky facts in
Heck
situations
yeah.
because of this podcast, and that makes me really happy because we want to make you the weird friend in your group.
Right? I feel like 75% of my reason for listening to podcasts is so that I have sweet fun facts that
Yes.
I can, bring out at parties. So,
Same, same.
here you go. Now you've got some hair facts.
Hair facts.
Hair facts. So if you would like to follow along and see some beautiful hair art, you can follow us on Instagram at Ghouls Night in Pod. And if you are looking for me, you can find me at Penny Snark.
And you can find me across all platforms at Midge Munster.
And until next time, good.
Good.